Morning, everyone. Um, we'll be going further into James Hillman's A Terrible Love of War in just a couple of moments. I want to pull up the link so that if any of you wish to join me um, here and chat with me about it as I go or help me read, that would be very welcome. And so I'm going to give you the link for that and the password. So let's see, Sundays. Here we go. Okay, so this is the link, and the password will be coming along anon. Just a moment. Oh, sorry, that was just the link again. Let me get the password. For some reason I didn't pick it up. Hmm. I seem to have messed this up, so let me go back into LinkedIn for a or into Zoom, and I will correct it. Just a moment. Okay, I finally have it. So here we are. So here is the password. If any of you wish to join me, please do. Good morning, Art. Nice to see you. Good morning, Deborah. Nice to see you. Um, I will get rolling in just a moment. Okay, today I'll be working with James Hillman's A Terrible Love of War. He published this about a decade ago before his death. Um, he died around 2010, or so I guess it was 15 years ago. I guess I can look in the front now and see when it was published. It was published in 2004, so 20 years ago. And he was referring back to uh, the war in Iraq, Gulf War II, but it's every bit as relevant now as it was then. Okay. Um, Okay, here we go. Sorry, just want to move things around just a little bit. All right. A terrible love of war. Okay, I'm on now page 19, and ironically, James calls this sort of sidebar note um, excursion. Got it. Okay, so excursion um, in quotes normal. What is normal? What are the what are the effects of this word? What does it imply? Let's look at its beginnings. Norm and normal derive from the Latin word norma, meaning a carpenter's square. Norma is a technical instrumental term for a right angle. It belongs first to applied geometry. Normalis in Latin means, quote, made according to the square, unquote, and normaliter, quote, a straight line directly, unquote. In the 16th and 17th centuries, normal meant rectangular, standing at a right angle. Then in the 1800s, usage widened and flattened the strictness the strictness of its meaning normal as regular. 1828 normal school for teachers training 1834 normal as average in physics 1859 and normalize 1865 and normal as usual 1890. The troubled feeling that arises when we hear war is normal comes from troubles in the way the word is used. Normal can be understood in two ways, which tend to fuse so that we tend to believe what is average, normal, also standard and right, i.e., the right standard. The average sense of normal is statistical, referring to occurrences that are usual, common, frequent, regular. This sense of the word can be depicted by means of a graph. For instance, the middle section of a Gaussian curve where it swells, hence normal as middle, mean, centered, and normal and abnormal as marginal, eccentric, at the edge. Abnormal then relies on quantitative or mathematical descriptions as unusual, infrequent, exceptional, deviate, rare, odd, and anomalous as abnormal. The second use of normal does not imply average and ordinary, but rather ideal. This second meaning still relies on the root square, straight, upright, but these technical descriptive terms now become normalized into metaphors. Norms now mean standards. A pre-established image prescribes the norm, the model, the rule. Whatever is closest to it is the most normal, even when that singular example is statistically rare, if not an impossibility in fact. The norm of conduct should be straight and upright. No lying, no cheating, no killing. The norms of bodily beauty should show no gross no gross distortion or blemishes. If normalized brings one down to the average, normative lifts one toward an ideal. The ideal standard against which you may measure your conformity or deviation may be set by theology, imitatio Christi, by law, the citizen, the comrade, by medicine, weight, height, age, gender, ratio, by philosophy, Stoic man, Kantian man, Nietzschean man, by education, test scores, intelligence quotient, by the cultural canons of a society. Normal is the first sense simply Normal in the first sense simply describes the way most things are. Normal is the second sense Normal in the second sense prescribes things as they might be best. When the two meanings merge, then average becomes the standard. In fact, the very word standard shows shows this merging. Today it tends to mean usual, ordinary, regular rather than ideal. Or worse, the ideal becomes conformity with average rather than an image of perfection. When the two meanings merge in regard to war, then descriptions of battle become prescriptions for battle. Should devolve should devolve to what most people do. If war is hell, in as Sherman said, then war ought to be hell. Ideally, war will be hellish, which Sherman demonstrated according to the residents of Georgia. Since butchery happens, it ought to happen, and a medal shall be bestowed upon the one who approximates the ideal norm by killing the most. Pentagon planners lay out thermonuclear scenarios are following the logic of normalcy, in which the greatest horror fuses with the greatest good. The state of war suspends morality, renders morality derisory, writes Levinas. This is a terrible thought, as terrible as war. The way beyond this devastating dilemma is to break apart the fusion so as to contain the term normal and the statement war is normal within the limits of its own paradigm. In war, at war, while engaged, immersed under its sway, the norm war generates within itself are not are not normative beyond itself. This omnivorous appetite to encroach and consume other norms of other gods, suspending their norms, it is war's gravest danger. Because war is total on the battlefield, McClellan did not grasp this, keeping back his reserves at Antietam. Not, nor did Meade, who was too spent to follow up on Gettysburg. War must be all out totalitarian, monomanic in its single minded pursuit, and ruthlessly monotheistic in its demand for negating all other norms. That war is now considered total war, world war, global, and with no foreseeable and in time or limit, no foreseeable end in time or limit in target, equal in concept to the totalizing power of its instruments, reveals that war is monotheistic in essence. The response to the megalomania of its normalcy requires maintaining the countervailing powers of all the other gods and their norms. This connection between monotheistic thinking, religion, and war we will explore in chapter 4. I just want to read that second. Uh, the response. Okay, the response to the megalomania of its normalcy requires maintaining the countervailing powers of all the other gods and their norms. Okay, so that's the end of the quote unquote excursion sidebar. Um, I wonder if we have any comments on the normalcy of war at this point. Okay, all right, let me proceed then. To declare war normal does not eliminate the pathologies of behavior, the enormities of devastation, the unbearable pain suffered in bodies and souls, nor does this idea that war is normal justify it. Brutalities such as slavery, cruel punishment, abuse of young children, corporal mutilation remain reprehensible, yet find acceptance in the body politic and may even be incorporated into its laws. Though war is normal, shocks, though, though, quote, war is normal, unquote, shocks our morality and wounds our idealism, it stands solidly as a statement of fact. Just trying to turn the page. Okay. War is becoming more normalized every day. Trade war, gender war, net war, information war, but war against cancer, war against crime, against drugs, poverty, and other ills of society have nothing to do with the abnormalities of war. These civil wars, wars within civilian society, mobilize resources in the name of a heroic victory over an insidious enemy. These wars are noble, good guys against the bad, and no one gets hurt. This way of normalizing war was whitewashed, has whitewashed the word and brainwashed us so that we forget its terrible images. Then, whenever the possibility of actual war approaches with its reality of violent, death dealing combat, the idea of war has been normalized into nothing more than putting more cops on the street, more rats in the lab, and tax rebates for urban renewal. Deborah says, war is hell. This compels minimum standards at the very least. Yeah, absolutely. I base this statement, quote, war is normal, unquote, on two factors we have already seen its constancy throughout history and its ubiquity over the globe. These two factors require another more basic acceptability. War could not happen unless there were those willing to help them happen. Conscripts, slaves, indentured soldiers, unwilling draftees to the country. There are always masses ready to answer the call to arms, to join up, to get to the fight. There are always leaders rushing to take the plunge. Every nature has its hawks. Every nation has its hawks. Moreover, resistors, dissenters, pacifists, objectors, and deserters rarely are able to bring war to a halt. The saying, quote, someday they'll give a war and no one will come, unquote, remains a fond wish. War drives everything else off the front page. If war is normal, is this because it is lodged in human nature or because it's inherent it is inherent to societies? Is war basically an expression of human aggression and self-preservation, or an extension of pack behavior. The hunting pack, the raiding pack, all the way up to the coalition of millions in a distant land. Let me just see what else is being said here. Deborah says AI has a lot to do with this distancing from immoral means to the end. I have no doubt about it, because AI has no morality, indeed. Okay, the New Testament opts for the first. Whence come wars? Come they not hence, even of your pleasures, that war is in your members? Ye lust and have not, ye kill and covet or cannot obtain. Ye fight, ye fight in war, ye have not because you're U.S. not. James 4, 1 through 2. Wars begin in the lowliness of our all too human material desires. Plato concludes, quote, the body fills us with loves and desires and fears and all sorts of fancies and a great deal of nonsense, with the result that we literally never get an opportunity to think at all about anything. Wars and revolutions and battles are due simply and solely to the body and its desires. All wars are undertaken for the acquisition of wealth, and the reason we have to acquire wealth is the body. That was earlier Plato. Later he found another source of war, quote, all states by their very nature are always engaged in an informal war against all other states. But Kant, like Hobbes before him, takes it back from society, finding war to be an uncaused component of human nature for which no explanation need be sought. War, he writes, requires the motivation, but appears to be ingrained in human nature and is even valued as something noble. Agreed, opines Stephen LeBlanc's book, Constant Battles. Warfare is ingrained from earlier times back to chimpanzees. Not so, argues R.B. Ferguson. Archaeology supports his view that warfare is a development of only the past 10,000 years. Ingrained or acquired individual persons' aggressive instinct or social groups' aggrandizing claims. The various contesting assertions about the origins of war can be reduced to two basic positions. On the one side, theories of psychoanalysis that take human nature back to earlier loss of love objects and to the birth trauma, and theories of animal biology, inborn release mechanisms of fight or flight, theories of determining genes pushing to get what they want. On the other side, war is a product of an internal structure of groups, their belief systems, their territorial claims, their exogamous fertility requirements, and the collective psyche of the crowd as such. In both cases, whether human drive or societal necessity, war remains an imagined enemy. War, writes Hobbes, spelled Warre, is that condition where every man is enemy to every other man. And Clausewitz insists that the enemy must always be kept in mind. The idea of otherness or alternity that currently dominates thinking about gender and race and economy is too abstract to unleash the dogs of war. Can you imagine a war without first imagining an enemy? Whether the focus of be upon prey, sacrificial victim, evil spirit, or object of desire, enmity mobilizes the energy. The figure of the enemy nourishes the passions of fear, hatred, rage, revenge, destruction, and lust, providing the supercharged strength that makes the battlefield possible. Okay, I'll just stop there for a minute and take a look at what you're saying. Deborah says 90 million. That is, uh, or isn't the definition of insanity doing the same thing and expecting a different result. It will be just a quick little war. Yeah. Well, we certainly um, can say that a lot of ignorant politicians have gotten into quick little wars, and others um, have got to fight them, unfortunately. And I would just observe that, um, one attitude in the Marine Corps is nobody wants to go to war, but somebody has to know how. That makes a certain amount of sense because if you don't know how, then somebody's going to eat your lunch. That's for sure. Um, and we don't want that. And in in the basic school, they emphasize the Clausewitz idea that war is diplomacy by other means. In other words, when diplomacy fails, war comes. And well, I guess we're seeing that. I sure would like having one of you to discuss all this with. Deborah says, isn't the definition of insanity doing the same thing and expecting a different result? It will be just a quick little war. Okay, yep, I read that. I'm sorry. Okay, moving on. War certainly does rely upon the individual's repressions and or aggressions, pleasure in demolition, appetite for the extraordinary and spectacular, mania for autonomy. War harnesses these individual urges and procures their compliance, without which there could be no wars. But war is not in individual psychology writ large. But war is not individual psychology writ large. Individuals certainly fight. Individuals certainly fight ruthlessly and kill. Families feud and harbor revenge. But this is not war. Soldiers are not killers. Even even well trained and well led infantrymen have a strong unrealized resistance toward killing, which tactically impedes the strategy of every engagement. Only a polis state, city, or society can war. The only source of war is politics, said Clausewitz. Politics is the womb in which war develops. For war, we emerge from this womb for the individual to mutter aggressions and appetites. There must be an enemy. The enemy is the midwife of war. Oh, yeah. Okay. Oh, goodness. So, how many of you think that this is going to be a quick little war? The war that we have going. Uh, just let me know. Uh, quick or long. You can put your opinion on the you can put your opinion on the chat. So, meanwhile, as I'm reading this, I'm seeing a Navy. Um, I'm seeing an ad for a Navy video. Uh, why the U.S. Navy rushed Tripoli, the USS Tripoli, to the Strait of Hormuz. And whisper who dares. It's and Artist in Life says long war of attrition for sure, and Richard says long never ending. Yeah, I'm afraid so, because Iran's a pretty big country. It's in population. It's about um, just over a quarter of the size of the American population, and not a small country like countries we fought before. Obviously, um, the Republic of Vietnam, which fought against my generation, um, didn't have that many, that big of a population by any means. Um, okay, so I guess there is a presumption that this war is going to go on, and I, what I think is that something terrible will happen. I don't know what it is, um, but I know that our president is not up to the task of ending or winning this war. And taking on a war of attrition, um, Artists in Life, taking on a war of attrition is not a very good idea against a country with 92 million people, because how how many of our American sons and daughters do we have to sacrifice in order to stop the animosity between the United States and Iran? Um, in World War II, it was in the millions. The number was in the millions. Also in World War One. Um, so anyway, so how is that going to affect U.S. economy, and especially the stock market? It is so scary. Well, the stock market's going to go down. That's very simple. It's not going to go up. It's arguable that um, some companies will do well because of the war. That's arguable. But overall, I think that our general well-being as citizens is going to decline for a period of time, at least, if not a very long period of time. I'm going to chew on a gummy, try to keep my voice together since I'm doing all the reading right now. The enemy provides the constellating image in the individual and is necessary to the state in order to collect individuals into a cohesive warring body. Rene Girard's Violence and the Sacred elaborates that single point extensively. The emotional foundation of a unified society derives from violent unanimity. The collective destruction of a sacrificial victim, scapegoat, or enemy upon whom all together, without exception or dissent, turn on and eliminate. Thereby, the inherent conflicts within a community that can lead to internal violence become exteriorized and ritualized onto an enemy. Once an enemy has found or invented, named, and excoriated the unanimous violence without dissent, i.e., patriotism and the preemptive strikes of preventive war, become opportune consequences. Okay, so a lot of ideas in this. Um, Franklin Delano Roosevelt knew that the United States was going to have to fight Japan during World War II, for sure, because things have been happening through the 30s that kind of made war inevitable. But he had to wait until the Japanese did something really dastardly, namely Pearl Harbor, in order to get the country ginned up. Now, Donald Trump has this same problem. The only problem but the only issue for him is whether um, the the event that gets the country ginned up it actually involves him in some way. Um, Nowadays, in the old days, um, Japan probably couldn't get at um, Roosevelt, but that's not true anymore. And so God knows what can happen. Um, and Richard says Trump just carries on his chaos while the middle class can't afford groceries, gasoline, or rent. Yeah, you think? Sorry, I need to see if I have any. Oh, I do. Okay, I'm going to tell you about one thing that I do like. These are Cliff Blocks, and this flavor is strawberry lemonade, and they're sours. They're made by the same company that makes Cliff Bars, and they're energy chews. They come in a package like this with six. I'm sorry, I think it's six. Yeah, six little blocks of gummy material. They're very tasty, and one stick equals about half a cup of coffee. And there are certain flavors, other flavors that have a little bit more of a punch. And I've been eating these for at school with my lunch instead of going and finding a cup of coffee, and it works great. It's very tasty. I can continue on with my work, and I do that. So I recommend them. I don't think you can get them in a grocery store. These Cliff Blocks, you have to order them from Amazon, but they're very good. And I've been using them in my school teaching for years now. Okay. It would be very nice if somebody who's listening would come on with me, excuse me, and help me read because my voice can read for a certain amount of time, but after that it sort of dies. So I've put the in the chat. You can find the link and the password, and if you wish, I'll put it in the link in the chat again if you can't see it. And let's go on. Okay, the enemy provides the constellating image in the individual and is necessary to the state in order to collect individuals into a cohesive warring body. Okay, so this is like um, like Pearl Harbor. That made all Americans pretty much believe together that something had to be done. In the case of Iran, um, Americans have wanted to do something about Iran or wanted something to be done about Iran for quite some time now because of the fact that they kidnapped um, quite a number of our embassy staff in 1979. And that was not well received. Um, and it did not cause war at that time. One of my contemporaries, Oliver North, decided he would lead a rescue mission. He attempted a rescue mission, which failed miserably, unfortunately. Um, and so, deep in the American psyche is a wish for something to be done about Iran. But now, um, but that's probably not enough to constellate a war. What constellates a war will be something much, much worse. And I understand that in the Muslim tradition, um, when there's mourning for somebody like a leader, like the supreme leader that was killed by the Israelis, um, the government can simply declare a state of mourning, and that will go on for 40 days. And so this is how the Iranian government has controlled their people right now because the people aren't um, aren't objecting, let's say, to the war um, and to what their government was doing. And so, but now, I'm sure that Mr. Trump and his uh, cohort in the White House are waiting for some big catastrophic event that will involve the death of many people. And it could be me. I live 30 miles to the east of Washington, D.C. So if they do something in Washington, uh, the fallout could be coming here. And I live 2 miles from the U.S. Naval Academy, so, which has been closed to visitors for some time now. Yeah. And Deborah, certainly I never expected that you would be able to come on and read with me. I understand how late it is, and I appreciate your being here at all. Deborah lives in Australia, which is quite a number of hours, 16 hours, I think, ahead of us. And so it's the middle of the night there. Uh, okay. All right, reading on. In Rene Girard's Violence and the Sacred, elaborates this single point extensively. The emotional foundation of a unified society derives from violent unanimity. The collective destruction of a sacrificial victim, scapegoat, or enemy upon whom all together, without exception or dissent, turn on and eliminate. Therefore, the inherent conflicts within a community that can lead to internal violence become exteriorized and ritualized onto an enemy. Once an enemy has been found or invented, named, and excoriated, the unanimous violence without dissent, i.e., patriotism, and the preemptive strikes of preventive war become opportune consequence. So, so that's what happened 3 days after World War II. Um, Roosevelt goes to Congress and gets a declaration of war in World War II. That has not happened since, um, but presidents have made plenty of wars since then, but not at the scale of World War II. Um, all right. The state becomes the only guarantor of self preservation. If war begins in the state begins in enmity. 13 colonies of a variety of geographies, religions, laws, languages, economies, but a common enemy. For all the utopian nobility of the Declaration of Independence, the text actually presents a long list of grievances against the enemy of them all, the king. Mind you, now, there may not actually be an enemy. All along, we are speaking of the idea of an enemy, a phantom enemy. It is not the enemy that is essential to war and that forces wars upon us, but the imagination. Imagination is the driving force, especially when imagination has been preconditioned by the media, education, religion, and fed with aggressive boosterism and pathetic pictures by the state's need for enemies. The imagined phantom, the imagined phantom swells and clouds the horizon. We cannot see beyond enmity. The achievement I'm sorry, the archetypal idea gains a face. Once the enemy is imagined, one is already in a state of war. Once the enemy has been named, war has already been declared, and and the actual declaration becomes inconsequential, only legalistic. The invasion of Iraq began before the invasion of Iraq. It had already been it had already begun when that nation was named among, it had already begun when that nation had been named among the axis of evil. Okay, all right. Whew. Okay, I'm gonna. Uh, we've been going for near an hour. I'm gonna chew on a Cliff Block here because my voice is bothering me, and also I'm hypnotizing myself. And so we'll take sort of a 5 minute break while I do that. Anybody is invited to come on online with me and talk with me about these issues. And I will be here, but I'll mute myself for the next 5 minutes. I'll even time it. How's that? Okay. Okay, I guess I can get going now. Um, don't want to belabor these things. Okay, mind you now, there may not actually be an enemy. All along we are speaking of the idea of an enemy, a phantom enemy. It is not the enemy that is essential to war and that forces wars upon us, but the imagination. Okay, good point here. This is why we're discussing this in a Carl Jung um, reading group, because imagination is what Carl Jung was about and what the meaning of imagination. So, moving on. Imagination is the driving force, especially when imagination has been preconditioned by the media, education, religion, and fed with aggressive boosterism and pathetic pieties by the state's need for enemies. The imagined phantom swells and clouds the horizon. We cannot see beyond enmity. The archetypal idea gains a face. Once the enemy is imagined, one is already in a state of war. Once the enemy has been named, war has already been declared, and the actual declaration becomes inconsequential, only legalistic. The invasion of Iraq began before the invasion of Iraq. It had already begun when the nation was named among the axis of evil. Enmity. My timer. Yep. Okay. Okay. Enmity forms its images in many shapes. The nameless women to be raped, the fortress to be razed, the rich houses to be pillaged and plundered, the monstrous predator, ogre, or evil empire to be eliminated. An element of fantasy creates the rationality of war. Like the heart, war has its reasons that reason does not comprehend. That's a good concept. I don't think. War has its reasons that reason does not comprehend. Hmm. These exfoliate and harden into paranoid perceptions that invent the enemy, distorting intelligence with rumor and speculation, and providing justifications for the violent procedures of war. And harsh measures of depersonalization at home in the name of security. Tracking down the body of a young Viet Cong freshly killed in a firefight, Philip Caputo writes, quote, there, oh good, hooray, glad to have you, whoever you are.
Good morning, it's Amila.
Hi, Alma, nice to see you. Uh, I'm delighted to have you here.
Thank you.
You know, if you were traveling in the former Yugoslavia recently, were you not?
Yes, I was in former Yugoslavia, and the country is called Montenegro.
Oh, Montenegro
Yes, and I did, however, travel to Kosovo and Bosnia,
now. Uh-huh.
and I remember there were uh, houses that were in rubble, kind of like what we're seeing now with
Right.
Iran and Palestine.
Yeah.
And they, if you go to Sarajevo in Bosnia, they have this beautiful American embassy there,
Mm.
and they also have buildings that are still intact, but people were advised not to live there anymore, but they wanted to go back home anyway, although there are still holes from bullets and bazookas, and they're still living there.
And how long ago now was this war over?
So
I don't.
my
uh,
yeah, so my in Yugoslavia or in Bosnia,
Well, Bosnia, yeah.
I think it began in 1991.
Wow, that's a long time ago.
Yeah, in the 1900s.
Well, it's 35 years ago now, and
Yes.
and that's a long time. And you're still seeing those ravages today. Well, I shouldn't be surprised if you go to Washington, D.C. Um, you can still see the ravages of the 1968 riots, which occurred upon the murder of Martin Luther King Jr. And there's still a bunch of buildings boarded up, only 3 or 4 blocks from the U.S. Capitol. It's still a shame. But anyway, thank you for joining. Thank.
Thank you for having me as always. And listening to you this morning, I was fasting only for one day because I was very stressed out with
Uh-huh.
my finals, and I'm finally preparing, God willing, to graduate. I
Oh,
just, yeah, I just saw a quote by an American artist. I forget her name, but she said, quote, "For an artist, time is never wasted," end quote. So there is no, I guess it's sort of this philosophical journey of our own lives.
yeah.
And
We all need that, I think.
and this week while I was fasting, I couldn't decide which prayer was the best.
Hmm.
Um, so it's a very selfless act. It's sort of it's not starvation. There is a time that we eat,
Yeah,
and then the rest of the day we sort of discipline our bodies not to eat, to avoid temptation.
yeah,
And then by another certain time, so it's basically from sunrise to sunset,
right.
and then at sunset we break our fast and we eat.
Oh, yeah.
For those who don't know, I know you know.
Yeah, well, we just had Eid a couple of days ago, Eid al-Fitr, which is the end of human sacrifice, as I understand it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so what arose to me, I'm sorry, I get a little bit religious, but I'm not radical.
yeah.
What came to me, praise be to God, what came to me was
Alhamdulillah.
was the cave. And I said to myself, huh, the cave. So what I do is I just kind of like, I mean, this is not sorcery or witchcraft, but because we have such a diverse audience,
Yeah.
I basically picked the tarot with
Hmm.
my Quran, and I
Yeah.
just said, whatever page I open the Quran to, that's what I'm going to read.
Oh
So I
boy.
landed on the cave.
Oh.
So, uh-huh. So then I said, let me go on YouTube and find an imam who is reciting the cave in Arabic.
Hmm.
And so I'm listening to that, and at the same time, I'm praying. And then I think to myself, after I rewatched the video and read the translations, um, because my Quran, believe it or not, is from India.
I
So
do believe it,
yeah,
sure.
I was actually surprised because I found out that there are more Muslims in India than in anywhere else, any other country that is non-Muslim in the world. And
E-
that,
Except Indonesia.
yeah, and that really shocked me. I said, "Oh, that explains." So they have this free foundation where you could get a free Quran because my grandmother's Quran, we had to put that one um, to rest. It was retired.
Hmm.
Um, and it was a beautiful Bosnian and Arabic Quran.
Wow.
Yeah. But anyway, so basically, for those who don't know what the story is about, it's about these people, and they are, I think it was Christians, and they're running away from this war of religions, right? So it's before the Crusades. It's people who are worshiping idols, like Baal and who just ancient deities and that kind of stuff. And
Yeah.
so they run away into the cave and they fall asleep for they fall into a trance. They're hypnotized by the minerals that are within this cave, and um, God sort of preserved them for another 300 years, and they wake
Oh.
up, and it's it's like this philosophical example of the human condition.
Hmm.
Um, because when those Christians came out of the cave, even though now people believed in one God, so there were still wars because now it was the war of whose God is the righteous God.
who's who's got the right
So
one? There's only
yes.
one God, but it's my God.
Yeah. So it's like, so first of all, there's a whole LLC of gods, and now it's a sole
Yeah.
proprietorship, but who's the best one? And so that's the whole point. It's the human condition. It's just this to cease to exist, who is correct, whose way of life is correct. Just like when we had Jordan with
Hmm.
us, I really enjoyed having Jordan with us because he always had his perspective and I had my perspective, and we would always go back and forth between perspectives.
Right.
And it's the premise of my argument and the premise of his argument are very different, but
Yeah.
also we come from different walks of life and we've experienced life differently. um
Yeah.
so that's how it is. But the
Yeah.
problem is, after reading this verse, I'm telling you, Skip, I had a mental health crisis.
You had a mental what?
I had a mental health crisis after
Oh
reading
boy.
that. I was shook. I mean, I wasn't freaking out, but at the same time, I kind of was freaking out.
Huh.
And I couldn't help myself. I I was thinking to myself, people want to go to the moon with these problems. You know, People in the United States are fleeing the United States
Yeah.
to study abroad, to transfer their jobs.
Yep.
With
There was a big news article today um about how some seniors are electing to board ships and just stay at sea all the time.
Yeah, and this is the problem
Yeah, you
because
think?
yeah, because this is America.
Hmm.
And just like those people in that building that could collapse at any time,
Yeah.
they went back home. they decided that, I mean, I'm not encouraging people to risk their lives, but what they did was they had this message that, okay, these people, they're sort of like the people of the cave because they survived this war, and some of them are Serbs, some of them are Bosniaks, some of
Hmm.
them are whatever they are, and they came back home and they went back to their apartments and they fixed up their home, and they're still there 35 years later, knowing that, this thing is going to collapse any day now, but I'm home. You know, my
Well,
my my hard-earned money when I first got this place was invested into this place. My memories with people who were once living, who had passed because of this war. Um, so it's like reclaiming their lives, reclaiming their space,
yeah,
reclaiming their home and all of the memories that are within that space.
yeah. Well, I certainly saw that in Japan over my lifetime. I first went to Japan when I was 15 years old, which was only 17 years after the end of World War II. And the Cathedral of Yokohama was in rubble. And I saw families living in caves, on dirt floors in caves. Um, but Japan has reinvented itself multiple times since then. I went back 16 years later after I graduated from high school. I went back 16 years later and ran a company there for 5 years, very successfully. And and it's actually Japan has actually changed two generations worth. They overlay a new society over the old society. It's incredible to see. In India, it's very clear where you see the 21st century overlaid over the 12th century. It's just unbelievable. Okay, we have about two and a half more pages before a break in the text. So I propose to get through those two more pages, two and a half more pages, as my contribution for today's um, reading. Okay, okay, so he's talking about harsh measures of depersonalization at home in the name of security. Okay, tracking down the body of a young Viet Cong freshly killed in a firefight, Philip Caputo writes, quote, "There was nothing on him, no photographs, no letters or identification. It was fine with me. I wanted this boy to remain anonymous. I wanted to think of him not as a dead human being with a name, age, and family, but as a dead enemy. A dead enemy, however, leaves an existential gap. No one there to fight. Because the enemy is so essential to war, if one party gives in to defeat, the victor also loses his raison d'etre. He has nothing more to do, no justification for his existence. Therefore, rites of triumph to ease the despair of the victors, whose exultation does not last. Celebrations, parades, dancing, awarding ribbons and medals, or a rampage against civilians and collaborators to keep the enemy present. As the war against Nazi Germany drew to a close, Patton grew gloomy. He expected a tremendous letdown, but soon found a new enemy in Russia, communist Russia, savages, Mongols. In short, the aims of war are none other than its own continuation, for which an enemy is required. Okay, so war, we have to think of the war archetype, which is what Hillman is positing here. In other words, a pattern that exists not in us, not in anything that we own or anything else. It just exists in the ether. And um, eventually, something adds, fleshes out that pattern, and then we have a war again. And it's no different from um, a new mother, let's say, who has just had a baby. Um, Now she's a mother, and now the archetype of mother will overwhelm her. Not necessarily the only archetype that gives interest to her life, but the mother archetype certainly does that. It makes the mother love the child. Am I right?
Oh, I had a very difficult time um, in my marriage, but I was always very proud to be a mom. I when I well basically first of all, I'm an Aquarius.
Mhm.
so I'm very rebellious, spontaneous, eclectic, eccentric, all these things. And I'm just prancing and dancing around life and testing the waters, trying to figure out where I aspire to work, what I'd like to do. And then I had my elders telling me advising me, consulting me, and um, lecturing me on what they think is the right thing for me to do. And
Yeah.
I basically took that in as like a suggestion box.
Hmm.
And then when I became pregnant, I thought it was a joke. And I remember telling my gynecologist, ah ha ha ha, April Fool's isn't today. And she said, do you think I have time to tell you an April Fool's joke? I said, okay, okay, okay. And then, I went and I told my mom, and she was so shocked. It was like, I've never seen her so shocked in my whole life. And my mom is she's an Aries, so she's very happy, but she's also very serious and determined. And she's level headed. She has her head on her shoulders.
No.
And so when my son was, as I was getting larger and larger, it was this journey of me continuing going to college, and I changed my major,
Hmm.
and I had a sense of what I wanted to do. I was eating healthier. I made better choices, and I became more spiritual. And I also, before I became pregnant, that was the first time that I began fasting,
Hmm.
because I told my grandma, "Oh, I'll fast when I'm 19 or 20 or whatever." So that was the first time that I finally started fasting, which was about 11 years ago. And so after that Ramadan, no, sorry, after that Eid al Iftar,
Hmm.
my, I guess God said, okay, now it's your time to be a mom because you have so much love to give. And, why not give it to a child? So
Hmm.
I said, okay, I'm pregnant. That's it. And as my son was growing in my tummy, in my womb, he was kicking me and using my rib cage as like monkey bars. And it was very uncomfortable. So it was this sort of new journey with my body.
Yeah.
And I feel like um, it was a beautiful experience to have. Um, but then after having my son, 8 years later, when I tried having another baby, um, I kept having miscarriages. So I went to a specialist and they told me they don't know what's going on. Maybe I'm very stressed out. Maybe it's my lifestyle. And I met some very intelligent women who also cannot have babies. In particular, I met one woman who adopted her her sister who had died of HIV, who had died of AIDS back in the 90s. She adopted her children, and
Uh-huh.
she had like 18 kids.
Wow.
Yeah, she had 18 kids, so she adopted all 18 of those children. And this woman, she has her own business. She has a company where she encourages um, women of color to open up their own businesses.
Hmm.
And she sort of like loans them money and then they have to pay her back. And it's really cool. And when I heard her story, when she told me her story, I was, which was 8 years ago when I was still drinking, and she told me her story, and I said, this is really amazing because here's this woman who adopted 18 freaking kids. Like my grandma was one of 10 kids, and some of them along life passed away. But 18 whole children. Um, Her last child was born when she did have AIDS, but somehow that child never ended up getting AIDS. And so, yeah, so it was a miracle because the baby wasn't born with AIDS or HIV. She was born healthy, thank God.
Yeah.
And yeah, and so this story is so amazing. The girl, she grew up. She's like 5 years younger than me. She grew up and she became like a doula for
Hmm.
Black women
Yeah.
in the projects here
A doula.
in
Yeah.
Brooklyn. Yeah,
Hmm. Interesting. All right. Well, let's
yeah.
let's read on with this and just another couple of pages. With the defeat of the Confederates in 1865, who could next serve as enemy for Union troops and their generals? General Sherman urged Grant to exterminate the Sioux, including the children, and General Sheridan famously declared, "The only good Indian is a dead Indian." General Custer, hero of the Shenandoah campaigns, was already out west in 1866 and smashing the Cheyenne in 1868. Like war, the fantasy of the enemy has no limit, so that the dead Indians meant also a dead buffalo. Some 680,000 were shot down. One man could take 100 a day. Between 1871 and 1874, nearly 11 million pounds of buffalo bone were shipped from the killing fields, according to Rowe's analyses of the records. Oh my God. 11 million pounds of buffalo, okay, in 3 years. If the enemy is evil, then any means used to oppose evil are ipso facto good. If the enemy is a predator, consider the monster films, the dinosaur films, the gangster films, then kill any which you can. If the enemy is an obstacle standing in the way of your self preservation, self establishment, or self aggrandizement, then knock it down and blow it apart. Carthage must be destroyed. Tokyo firebombed Tokyo firebombed. Alexander ordered the leveling of every single structure in Persepolis. Christians defaced all the statues of the Egyptian gods they could they could get their hands on. Protestant Christians in England even destroyed Catholic images of Mary and Jesus. The Taliban blew up the giant Buddhist images carved in the rock of Bamiyan. Israel bulldozed West Bank houses and gardens. These are not exceptional deviant instances. So why does Sontag say, quote, we can't imagine how normal war becomes. All that happens, unquote, all that happens in it, during it, after it, is always the same, regular, to be expected, predicted, in general, conforming to its own standards, meeting its norms. SOP. The imagination can be gradually inducted into the battlefield and can follow that creeping desensitization of civilian outsider mentality, journalist and aid worker and independent observer, that process uh, from the intolerable through the barely endurable to the merely normal. Okay, I need to make a short bio break. I'm sorry, I'll be back in a moment. You're free to talk while I'm gone if you want to, Emma.
Yeah, sure. Right. So, yeah, so as I was saying, sometimes you don't have to have affection for uh, only children that are naturally yours. You can also feel that mother child bond even with children that are not naturally yours. Um, just like this woman who had adopted her sister's children. She loved them very much as if they were her very own children. And obviously, she is someone who does have a lot of compassion for others because of what she does for a career. And I feel that the reason why so many of us go to war with ourselves or with others is because we have so much affection for what we believe in. And oftentimes people turn that affection a little bit too much upward into their brain and not outward into the world. Because overthinking and over loving are completely different. Radical self love and radicalist ideas are completely different. One of them is dangerous, and the other one we need an abundance of. So, especially right now with all of these wars of misinformation in the news, the war of civil rights once again, um, such as gay marriage, women's rights, family rights, all of these things that so many people have fought for is now going backward. And we really need a lot of radical self love and radical outer love for each other. in these misinformed times.
Okay, back. Afflictions older men face. Uh,
Would you say, Skip, that um, war is egocentric?
well, it certainly is egocentric to itself, I would say. If war is a being in the sense of a archetype being a being, um, it's an archetype like the mother archetype
Right.
is is a being. It's there when you go through the steps to incarnate that being. It fuses itself into you, right? And you become that.
Yeah, sort of like what Oppenheimer said in that interview.
Yeah,
I have become destruction.
yeah. Well, he was reading from the Bhagavad Gita in that case, in that thing. I am death. Yeah. Um,
He really resonated with that. He really felt those words as they fit how he felt from what he had done, because he knew that he made this the atomic bomb, and he knew that this was very powerful. And after finally making it, he realized the aptitude of how dangerous it was. And so he would have to live with that forever.
yeah, obviously, we all have to live with it, and we all have contributed to it, whether we accept the fact that we have or not. Okay, because if we could change it, we would, I presume. Okay, all right, I'm going to read on. These are not exceptional deviant instances. So why does Sontag say we can't imagine how normal war becomes? All that happens in it, during it, after it is always the same, regular, to be expected, predictable in general, conforming to its own standards, meeting the norms. SOP. The imagination can be gradually inducted into the battlefield and can follow that creeping uh, desensitization of civilian outsider mentality. Parentheses, journalist and aid worker of and independent observer, quote, close parentheses. That process from the intolerable through the barely endurable to the merely normal. How can the living cells in any person in the extreme of exhaustion, amid dying friends and mangled dead, howitzer shells whooshing past like freight trains, accommodate to this normality? How can any person thrice wounded climb back on his horse and continue the charge straight into the cannon's mouth? The human psyche's capacity to normalize the most adverse conditions, adapt to them, find them usual. People in extreme climates rarely move to another geography. Very few captives resist their imprisoners. Has kept the species globally spread, diverse, and alive through millennia. Normalization may allow survival, and the normalization may also be one of the dumbest of human faults. How does it differ from denial, willful unconsciousness, ignorant psychic numbing? Doesn't doesn't accepting all also lead to pardoning all? The shadow side of intolerance is the side of the sense of the intolerable. To normalize may mean to take the side not of survival, but of death. War achieves an accommodation with death. After a series of missions through dense anti-aircraft fire, bomber crews begin to believe they will not make the last few mandatory runs before rotation. Veterans on patrol cling to superstitious routines to fend off the expectation that the next bullet will find them. Prolonged combat turns the soul into an autoimmune anesthesiant. A German writes of having, quote, lost feeling for a lot of things, unquote. An Englishman compares the state with going under an anesthetic with auto hypnosis. But the sense they but the senses may remain vigilant, especially hyperactivity of the sense of smell. Both Viet Cong and the Americans detected the hidden presence of each other by characteristic odors. In the abysmal dark of Hades, the soul is known by scent. Um, Not senses, but the psyche seems to have vacated the person and entered the mythical underworld populated by shades and phantoms. Combatants speak of seeing things, firing away into illusions. The person whose identity is given by life and its expectancies, sometimes called hope, has been abandoned by those expectations. The psyche is no longer the same. I am all right, just the same as ever, writes a British soldier to his wife in 1916. But no, that can never be. No man can experience such things and come out the same. Wars War's violence does not consist so much in injuring and annihilating persons as in interrupting their continuity, making them betray not only commitments but their own substance. War destroys the identity of the same, writes Levinas. The psyche cannot be the same as before because it has become a partner with the soul of the dying, companion of the dead, half in, half in love, with uh, easeful death. Normal means becoming one um, with the norm, dead among the dead. If these pages are thick with death, says Susan Griffith, think of the battlefield. Corpses in different stages of decay and slowly dying. Moments of death exist around you everywhere. Who are you? You are among the living, but can you be certain? Okay. All right. That completes that section. Um, there's another excursion that's coming up for next week. We'll read it, called Peace. And so that'll be interesting to read. Let me look at the comments here. Um, so Richard says, war is when the mysteries incarnate into men, and because they are spirits of the lowest realms, they're full of rage and unchecked emotion. He goes on, I read this week that Trump knows Kabbalah. I'm not sure if the people who said that are correct or possibly they took it out of context. One can realize, and Archifanes says, one can realize to what an extent men's minds have been curved, both by deliberate and by unconscious conditioning. the cleavage between the thinking and the unthinking is appalling. And he goes on, Ariana Zarishka, Logan Federico, Austin Metcalf. What is the what is the commonality between these people who were murdered by dogs? Uh, and then why are these not pertinent issues for your lot? Well, they probably are. It's just I'm only one man, and I sometimes get help by a kindly friend like Amela. Um, and and Archifanes says, "Who is Abraham Epstein?" Yeah, um, good question. Um, we haven't changed so much, unfortunately, since the time of Abraham. We still have, my rabbi friend says Abraham ended human sacrifice, and indeed, Eid al-Fitr, which we just passed, celebrates that fact. But the fact is, we sacrifice our young people to war very regularly, and in the case of Epstein, we sacrificed young women. I'm not sure what the references to Abraham Epstein. I don't know who that is, um, but we do make sacrifices of our young people all the time, and ourselves. We sacrifice ourselves in various ways, um, and we have to come to grips with that. Now, most of the time, it doesn't end in death or something really nasty like what was going on with Epstein, but um, we do sacrifice our young people, unfortunately. Okay, Amela, anything else you want to talk about?
Sorry. No, I'm done. Thank you.
Okay, tell me, are you graduating in May or something?
Sorry, I was coughing. I have no idea. I haven't applied yet.
Uh,
I just know that I have 4 more classes left.
oh, 4 more classes. And and can you take them between now and May or not?
So what I do is I take the summer semester off so I can be with my family.
Yeah.
Um because I can't handle academic pressure.
Mm,
I don't take it very well. In fact, when one of my back in the early 2000s, um, like in 2007, I went to visit a friend of mine at New York University.
hmm
And I remember him telling me that they had recently had to um, bar the windows a little bit
mm,
and limit how far the windows can open. And they completely locked the balconies because some of the students felt that the pressure was so immense that they were hurting themselves.
oh
So,
gosh.
yeah, I take my mental health very seriously. I think a lot of people should, but some people they want to finish faster and they have. But I've also seen a lot of people that I went to high school with and college with changing their careers all the time. So
Mm,
I'm glad that I chose um, to after this focus on Jungian psychology.
good. And so you're majoring in psychology now?
Right now, I'm doing psychopathology, and then
Uh-huh.
I'm going to do art therapy.
Very good. You'll be good at that. Which does remind me, I did put up on my screen earlier uh, something to show everyone. As I'm doing my own art therapy and archetypal work, um, I I've been painting one 18 by 24 painting for each of my grandchildren, and I've got seven of them done now. Um, Six got one of my paintings, and one got a painting by Colleen. But I still have three left, and they're all in one family, and they're my youngest grandchildren, and they're um, twins. And so I decided to do a diptych, which means that um, I'm painting their two paintings together so that they fit together side by side. If you hang them together while they're growing up, that'll be the case. But then when they go their own ways, they will take their painting, but they'll know that they belong together. That's meaningful. So anyway, I'm going to share two I'll share a couple of images of this because it's a process. And so here's the first one, very early in the process, and I was I was I was just trying to connect up the two paintings, and again they're abstract, so I did this by throwing tea at the two pieces of white together, and I saw that there were some connections that I made, so that links them together. And then I got to painting, and I'll show you what the latest uh, evolution is as of this morning, because it turns out with the paint, the linkage can be much clearer. And so I'll share this one with you too. And let's see, where's the share? Okay, here you go. Once you start the painting, it becomes like this. And so I had seen the whale in the tea, and I had seen the rabbit in the tea much earlier, and I'm in the process of building this out. Um, on the right, among other things, I see spirits in this. The spirit of my mother, the children's great grandmother, is on the right side in this uh, aqua area with the broad cheeks and the big glasses and so on. Reminded me of my mother. And on the left side, if you see this area as goggles in you know below the sea, then I also see I have seen an image with these goggles of my son-in-law and the children's father. So that's kind of interesting. Are you still there, Amela?
Yes, I'm actually doing home decorating,
Okay, well,
but
do you have any
I'm
comment on
listening.
this? Do you see do you see what I've done here?
Uh, yes, it's beautiful. I see a lot of huh. It seems almost like it resembles what we've been what we've been reading, there's a lot of fantasy happening here.
Oh yeah,
Um,
no doubt about it. And that's the purpose of it, right? Because
right.
it's to stimulate imagination, these paintings. Um, and so the idea is that, well, it works like mirror, mirror on the wall, actually. You look at it, and what you see is your own unconscious. You don't see my unconscious. You see your own. And so you can ask this painting any question and you'll get an answer. You may not like the answer, but that's the thing. It is magic and it does work. Um, and so anyway, that's how I spend my mornings anyway. So um, so anything
Also,
else? Go
yes,
ahead.
I also like in the painting how you used some of the colors that symbolize the awakening of one's spirituality, the spiritual path.
Right, right. Yeah.
And
So
it's
go ahead.
yeah, I think that's I don't want to put you on the spot here, but that's been a theme for you, it seems like to me from from our conversations. There's been a lot
Yeah.
of um
Well, I've always,
many spiritual awakenings.
yeah, yeah, and these things happen to me all the time now that I know what to look for. And so I have been awakened, as you might say. Um, but but it's not awakened to um, any specific God or any specific method of worshiping God. It's, in the Christian or Judaism, in the Abrahamic religion sense, um, you know, I I'm very much with Jung in terms of each of us has our own God, and there is a collective unconscious, which is the collective God that really makes the decisions. And so, anyway, that's where I am for the most part. And but I keep enriching it and doing these classes twice a week help me enrich it truly. So thank you for being here and thank you for helping me today. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. So I'm going to sign off. Thank you, everybody, for being here. And